Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Lansford, and I'm a member of Alpha Chapter of Phi Beta Mu in Texas. I'm also on the Phi Beta Mu International Executive Board, and that is the organization behind these composer interviews that we are calling Music and Minds Chats with Composers. Today, I'm talking to composer and band director Eric Rath, who is coming to us from Canyon, Texas. For those of you unfamiliar with Texas towns, Canyon is in the Texas Panhandle, just south of Amarillo, and is the home of West Texas A&M University. Welcome, Eric, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for the invite and thanks for putting Candy on the map there. It's
And right
pretty
off the
exciting.
bat, I
Yeah,
my dog barking in the background. So we're just going to have a little bit of dog in the background, and I think
yes.
that'll be okay. It'll make it seem more homey. I want you to start at the very beginning with where you are from originally. Are you a native Texan?
I'm not. I'm from Oklahoma.
Well, I did my homework and I saw that.
Oh, okay.
So I want you to tell me where you came from and tell us a little bit about your band experience. And
Sure.
I say start from the very beginning.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for the invite. This is
Of course.
very kind of you to include me, and I hope that the conversation, I know it'll be fun, but
Yeah,
maybe it'll be valuable for somebody else too.
good.
Yeah, so I grew up in Tulsa Public Schools, and I think that's an important distinction to make because there's some very fine band programs in the Northeast Oklahoma area, and I didn't go to any of them. I went to a quasi-urban public school environment where we had some very nice band directors who did their very best. And not to pass any judgment on them, but our band programs were not strong. But as the son of professional musicians, it was in the house. It was in the blood that you were going to be a musician. And I think about that. I have good friends who have a strong football background, and all their boys play football, and it's
So
not a
your parents
surprise.
are musicians?
Yes, yes.
Oh, learned
Yeah.
something new already. Great.
Yeah, so my father is a retired oboist and woodwind doubler, and just retired from making Richard's double reeds this past August. And my mother she's semi-retired. They're both in their 80s, and she's a violinist. And so a lot of my upbringing in was tolerating sort of the band experience that I had. Um, but then going in the evenings, they'd have a symphony rehearsal, and poor gigging musicians don't have money for babysitters. So a lot of times my brother and I would either get left at home and fend for each other, or I would be told, "Hey, you're going to rehearsal tonight. Bring your homework, and you need to sit backstage, and you need to be quiet." And learned a lot about how an orchestra rehearses and what there is to learn from doing that. I loved band, but didn't really have much perspective on what band could be until we started competing in high school against Broken Arrow and Union and Owasso. And those are fantastic band programs, and they still
Oh,
are.
yes, yes.
Yeah, and I'd start, competing at region type events with other percussionists and just kind of realizing what was out there. So, loved it though, and did everything I could to make the bands as good as I could from the perspective of what a student can bring to the organization, and got pretty serious about being a band director. And my parents are West Texas A&M grads from back when it was West Texas State, and they grew up in this area. So even though I didn't, I had roots, grandparents, extended family, and still have quite a bit of family in the area. And they said, we were at TMEA. They were exhibiting with the double reed business, and they said WT was the one of the featured college bands. It was really incredible. Dr. Garner is incredible. If you're wanting to do anything in the band world, maybe you should give that a look and think through that as a possibility for college. And without making that an impossibly long story, I humored my parents, went out to Canyon to audition, and just was blown away by what Dr. Garner and Mr. Lefevre were doing with the bands here. And on the way home, I was like, I have to be a part of that. That was incredible. So I didn't get very far because I teach in Canyon where WT is. But most of my career has been here, trying desperately to provide a much better band experience for my students than I had as a student growing up. And I mean, the whole purpose of this is talking about composition, but all of my composition really is in the educational space. So I got bit by that bug too. And it's fun to be on the podium and teach your own stuff or learn from somebody else's works or just be around it and realize how much that influences what you write and how you write things too. So, yes, band director kind of first, depending on the time of year. And then composer, just kind of always in the background, always working on a project, always waiting for the next 3-day weekend to crank some music out.
Oh, that's cool. Well, there's first of all, I learned a lot and all that, but you were kind of a band director's kid without being a band director's kid because you
Oh,
grew
yeah.
up in the rehearsals
Yes.
rather than growing up in the band hall like so many band directors' kids did. So that's cool. So you knew pretty early on, what you were going to do then.
Seventh grade. Which I got to tell you, that's not common, and it has taken me my entire life to realize that. We have 5 kids. My oldest is she's a sophomore at WT. She plays in the band, but she's not a music major. And our second is he's a senior and he's trying to figure out what he wants to do. And it's been interesting because I just assumed everybody knows since the 7th grade what they wanted to do, and they just kind of went down that one singular path. But as it turns out, it's not very common at all.
Are there any composers or any pieces of music that you that were inspirational to you from your public school experiences?
So we played a lot of music we shouldn't have. And here I am not like trying really hard not to throw these
Be new.
wonderful. Yeah, well, in back then it was really hard not to play stuff that was way over your head because there wasn't James Swearingen writing a ton of stuff that was mass marketed, and certainly there was no Willie Owens at that time or Brian Balmages, and so it's so much easier to teach great quality literature
That is
middle school
such an
band.
important point. You are right. And
Yeah,
so I'm going to ask you, when did you graduate from high school?
1996.
Okay. So I wasn't sure how old you are. And, I'd already been teaching 20 years by then.
Oh yeah,
So
well,
during that time, you're exactly right. It was, we didn't have, in fact, I was teaching in Plano when James Swearingen first started writing all of these, wonderful pieces. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is so great.
yeah,
Because it was written specifically for, middle school. And it made it a lot easier to teach. So that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So we
So,
played a lot of things we shouldn't have, and it certainly contributed to why I don't think we were particularly good. But I will say, the composition thing, I think there's kind of 2 ways you can go about it. You can look at it as like, I'm going to be a serious composer in the sense that like Leonard Bernstein is a serious composer. There's a lot of orchestral implications behind that. I mean, I think you could say John Mackey is a serious composer. So, I mean, there's kind of that route, but
uh-huh.
then there's also the educational side. And for the longest time, I wanted to be a serious composer. And that's not to say that people who write in the educational space aren't serious composers, because they certainly are, but it serves a different purpose. And so I think it's worth mentioning. I went to college thinking I was just going to be the world's best band director. I still try really hard. I know I fall very short of that on the regular. But if I ever wanted to compose, it was to do something serious. But I will tell you, the first time I heard a piece of music and I thought, how did that composer make the band sound so good? It was Crest of Nobility by Robert Sheldon. And
I
I just remember, do what?
I know it. I've taught it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a landmark piece for that grade level. And I remember looking at the score and just being like, well, of course, everybody has a partner in crime. Everything's doubled to the degree that it is reasonably able to be. and it fits the ranges really well. And no one in this particular ensemble, they were making it sound really good because it was right down the middle of what that ensemble could play really well.
Huh?
And it gave me a great appreciation for somebody who could write a grade one, two, or three piece and make it sound incredible and make it that much easier on the band to not have to do crazy range things that are really inconsistent with what's going on in
Almost
the
unachievable, really.
for sure.
At least to sound good. But that's I just love your perspective on that. That's really good. So when did you start writing? Really, did you were you still in high school when you started writing, or did you start in college?
I kind of started writing just for fun in high school.
Oh,
And as a percussionist, everybody wants to write the coolest cadence you possibly can think of. So I would write drumline cadences and then pass them out and try to see if they worked. And I don't know that you call that composition in the strictest sense, but it was flexing that muscle. Um, then when I went to college and was around composition majors in a studio, I pursued composition lessons my junior year. I went in and I said, I really want to do this. So coach me. This is Dr. Norman Nelson at the time. And so I did my assignments for the first week, came back, and he said, hey, this is some really good stuff. Okay, here are your assignments for the second week. And by the third week, I came in with all my assignments done and a drop slip for composition lessons. And he said, you did really high quality work. Why are you bringing me a drop slip? And I said, because I have been completely unprepared for my percussion lessons the last 3 weeks, and I'm getting raked over the coals for it because I was spending all my time in the practice room working on my composition assignments. And he said, okay, well, I totally understand. Um, I'm always here. You don't have to be signed up for my class or signed up for applied lessons. Always feel free to bring stuff to me and we can look at it. And I said, I'm just too close to finishing my undergrad. I don't want to change majors and I don't want to have to start repeating classwork because I'm just going down the composition rabbit hole. But the beautiful thing is my career has allowed me to have opportunities to write and then to be in the educational space, to be able to write things that are good, that hopefully, well, write things that are publishable, that are of service to young musicians.
that's cool. I love that. So do you? I want you to tell us a little bit about your band directing career and
Sure.
how that's progressed. It's stayed in the same area.
It really has. I have not drifted very far. I think it's 3 minutes from my house to WT, but it's a great place to live and a fabulous community to raise kids in. Um, yeah, so I started needing observation hours, and I had heard that there was a really great band director at Randall High School in Amarillo, who was worth going and observing. And so I was trying to get all my observation hours done by the end of the year. I walked in, here's the last couple of weeks before the Christmas concert, and it's Andy Seeley teaching at Randall. Not many people realize that he was somewhere before Hebron, but everybody is somewhere. They're from somewhere.
I knew that.
And what's that?
I said I knew that he was there. Um,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I'm a Texas Tech graduate.
Yeah, well, and so you have that same thing in common with him because he's
Yeah,
a proud Red Raider as well.
yeah.
Um, within about 10 minutes, I was just blown away with what he was able to do, and it was both really serious, very purposeful with a sense of urgency, but not dictatorial. And the students were really responding very well to him. This was his first year at Randall. I think it was his first year. He was still very new. And I was just blown away by what he was getting out of the ensemble. So to make pretty long story short, he asked me to be the drumline instructor the following year. And so as I was finishing time at WT, I was his drumline guy. And then that parlayed into being his assistant for a couple of years, which were they're just monumental. I mean, I teach the way I teach to try to be like Andy as much as I humanly can.
Yeah.
And then I went back for a master's, and we ended up kind of splitting ways because I got married and he moved over to Hebron, and that's kind of a different set of pathways. But He and I stay in really regular contact, and he's coming to do a region band here in January, which I'm excited about. And gave up a couple of hours at TBA just to sit and have coffee with me and answer a bunch of questions and let me just kind of pick his brain because there are not very many people that have reached that echelon that you have that kind of access to.
Right.
So he's been instrumental in the formation of my career, and I owe a lot to that. But yeah, that was the start. I ended up being off a year for getting married. My wife was finishing college in Joplin, Missouri, so I
Oh,
taught a really rough rural orchestral situation for a year, and then made it back and taught at Randall for a number of years. Did a couple of years at Panhandle, and realized that while I enjoyed small school, I didn't enjoy small schools quite that small. Um, Taught orchestra for a couple of years after that. And then I've been in Canyon. This is well, this is year 25 overall, but this is year 11 in Canyon, 12, sorry, year 12 in Canyon, and year 6 at Canyon High as the head director.
so do you do only band though? You don't do orchestra now?
Right. There's no orchestra program in Canyon, so it's
Oh,
just
okay.
band all day, and it's a wonderful fit. Yes.
Well, speaking of orchestra, do you write for orchestra as well as for band?
The last time I taught orchestra, I did actually write quite a bit for my students just to sort of see if I could.
Uh-huh.
And a number of things got published during that time, but I really just haven't had many opportunities since. People know me as either a band composer or as a percussion writer, method book guy. So there just haven't been opportunities.
Yeah, whenever I was doing my homework before this, I saw the method book, um,
Yeah,
because I'm not that familiar with that at all. And is it full band method book?
there are several. You probably saw the Daily Drill, which has not even been out an entire year yet.
Okay, well, that makes me feel a little bit better because I wasn't familiar with it, and
Right.
I'm not in the classroom that much anymore. So tell us a little bit about that. So you're a drum guy. So do you
Mhm.
have a percussion beginning method book as well, or is it full
I
for full band?
Um, that the daily drills for full band, and it's for players in their second year and beyond. So it's not intended to replace anybody's beginner method book.
I love that because
Yeah,
what I found, of course, I do uh, just consultant work and stuff. But what I found, especially when I first started, is not very many people use a method book after the first year.
right,
And,
right.
I would go into really old band halls and find all these wonderful old method books, like I recommend and things that you couldn't get anymore. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, this is just gold. So anyway,
Yeah,
but that's cool. So for second, and third year students.
and beyond.
Yeah.
The idea, and I'm trying not to make this a commercial. My writing partner and I had written a kind of like a percussion version of that called the 5 minute drill
Uh-huh.
many years ago, and it's wild how continuously it gets used in a lot of places. But I would always kind of end up at Midwest every couple of years, and I would run into people who would say, "Oh, you did that 5 minute drill. Man, I really need that for full band." And eventually, we had the conversation at TMEA of 2020 that maybe we did need to do a 5 minute drill type of method book for full band because if you've spent any time outside of Texas, you know that the playing field is not always even when it comes to scheduling and resources and budgets.
All right.
So anything that is plug and play for band programs on a limited schedule and on a limited budget is really valuable.
Yeah.
And the big selling point of that 5 minute drill was all the play along tracks. Well, in the band world, we don't do a ton of play along tracks just I think because of the logistics and I don't know, maybe we feel like that's not ever been our home. But that's what the daily drill aims to do is take a lot of the technical material, the scales and the scale and thirds, the things that we used to do in the Fussell book when I was growing up, one of those great warhorse technique books, and add play along tracks, but also like the percussion stuff has a ton of accessories and two mallet and four mallet and a variety of difficulties for snare drum. So now it is a commercial, but that's why that one was valuable or sought after. We were trying to do something that we hadn't really seen published or available. And
That
yeah,
was
it's super
with the
new.
times, and that is keeping up with the times. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is. So, yeah, that's great. So, speaking of second, and third year and beyond, what do you think, like your composition that you're doing now? What grade level do you do the most?
Oh, well, it's a real wide variety, which keeps life interesting. I think I'm getting mostly asked to do things that are, well, I don't know. Grade 1.5 and 2 are the most recent places I've lived in, but then last year I wrote a flugelhorn concertino of all things, and it's very firmly a grade 4/5. And I have a commission for a grade 4 thing next year. So I really enjoy writing at the grade 1.5 and 2 level. Um, and I guess if somebody just came and said, "Hey, just write something," I might choose to do it there because it's a lot of fun and it's a unique challenge.
Well, before I was on this committee, I was on the uh, composition or for new compositions, for Phi Beta Mu. And, one of the big discussions was that grade 1.5 through up to grade 3 are the ones that are most playable by the most ensembles.
Right.
Even small school, high school, will play that grade 3. Whereas if you write all grade 4 and 5s, then, that cuts out a lot of your audience
For
or,
sure.
too. So I think that's great. So when you started teaching, did you write for your ensemble?
It was a lot of percussion stuff early on because that's where I felt like I had the greatest vocabulary and I actually had something to say. Um, but I got a little bit more. Well, I'll tell you, I'll tell this story. Dr. Garner is 95 and he conducted a community band concert last night. And I wasn't able to attend, but when he started that community band at WT, it meets on Monday nights. Um, he had seen like a little duet that I had written for a friend and I to play. And he said, "Hey, you need to write a band piece for our ensemble." So I threw every cool idea I could possibly think of into this one piece. And then at the very, very first Town and Gown community band concert, he even let me rehearse this thing and conduct it on the concert, which was super cool. And if you know Dr. Garner at all, you'll not be surprised to hear that he did spend about half of each of my rehearsal sessions critiquing my conducting, but that's Dr. Garner for you.
Okay, that's
Um,
hilarious.
he he gave me that opportunity, and once we got done with the concert, I was just totally bit by how fun it had been to write for band. And so that piece is in a grade 3.5 or 4. And it, to tell you, like, it's not a great piece. I've never been able to get it published. And I just kind of have just put that one on the shelf and move on. Um, but yeah, I started a lot with the percussion thing because I felt like I actually had something to say. And then once I was bit by that experience, I really wanted to become the next John Mackey or Carter Pan or Robert Sheldon or any of those esteemed um, composers. But I just really love teaching, and I love seeing students light bulbs come on. When they finally get something.
Yeah.
So it's fun to be able to do both, and then feel like maybe there's something valuable that I can bring to the educational composition side of things
Okay.
too.
Now, you said the word publisher, and so before I forget to do this, I want you to tell me what publishers you use, or are you self-published, or how does this all work?
Self-publishing is a whole job unto itself, so I don't even try.
Okay.
At one point, I thought, "Oh yeah, I can do that," but it was before I had kids, and it was before I was running a band program. So if you're going to self-publish, it really does become a pretty heavy part of your day. But no, most of my band stuff is with Alfred Publishing, and nearly all of my percussion stuff is with Tap Space. And that's the longest publication relationship I have is with them.
Okay. Um, so my first introduction to you was when our mutual friend Kim Cooley played one of your pieces at Midwest.
Yeah.
So tell me about your music that has been performed at different places.
So, I'll bring Andy Seeley back into the conversation. Even after he moved to Louisville and I stayed in this area, um, when he started to get the Hebron thing really buzzing and get it going, he was using chamber music to help um, move some vitality into the band program, which that's a whole other podcast that you can get into about the importance of chamber music and solo repertoire. But he had a clarinet choir that was going to play at Midwest, and he
Oh,
said,
yes, yes, I
"Yeah,
remember. Yeah.
yeah," and he said, "Hey, write me a clarinet choir piece." Well, I mean, I said, "Okay, sure." I hung up the phone and I thought, I have no idea how to write a clarinet choir piece, but I wrote him one.
Here
It
you
went
are.
over well. What's that?
I said, as a percussionist, here you are writing clarinet
Yeah.
music.
Oh, I just wrote for like, 8 marimba parts and like prayed that it was going to work on the clarinet. But
Go. There you go.
um, so they performed that. It was great. It eventually made its way onto the PML, which is fun.
Awesome.
But then the following year, his band was invited. And the following year, they were the 5A honor band. So he called me up and he said, well, we just got a Midwest invite, and I've done everything I can to highlight everybody in the band except the percussion section. So I need something that will be a band piece, but it's really percussion heavy. And I thought, okay, this is right up my alley.
Yeah.
And
There.
that was the piece Oracle, and that's on the class 4 list or grade 4 list rather. So, Kim feeds Andy.
Right.
Um, and she called me after she got her Midwest invitation. And she said, of course, Kim and I were classmates at WT.
I thought, yeah.
And she's an Amarillo native. So we've known each other for a long time. And she called and she said, I need you to write me something. And that it was kind of a joke. Well, maybe I'll write Oracle Junior. And, kind of like in honor of this teaching tree.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, I love that. You should totally do it." And we were joking on the phone one time about what would you call what was the Francis Macbeth thing? He'd always said he wished that he had written son of one of his famous
Uh-huh.
pieces. But and I was kind of like, well, I should write son of Oracle. And then I was like, oh, you'd call it soothsayer. And so that was the joke for the longest time. And then she texted me and she said, okay, what's the name of the piece? And I just kind of had resigned myself to say, oh, I think it's soothsayer. And she goes, oh, I thought that was a joke. Well, it's not a joke anymore because that's what the piece is called.
Well, it was a
So,
cool piece, and it was very
oh,
rhythmic.
thanks.
That's what I remember. It was rhythmic, and
Yeah, yeah.
so it's really great. So you've been performed at Midwest,
Mhm.
and uh, tell me some other, like out of state. How much uh, stuff do you have, or business you have out from out of state?
So TMEA a couple of times. And the TMEA thing, uh, there's a couple of pieces that I wrote that were composition contest winners for ATSSB when they were trying to get their composition contest going.
Uh-huh.
Maybe not the world's greatest pieces, but they had some notoriety early on, which is pretty cool. As far as outside, yeah, I mean, Chicago and Midwest. And not always do you know when you're going to get a performance. If the piece is published, you don't necessarily know who's buying it.
Right.
So there are times that you kind of have to, well, I'm a member of ASCAP, and so you can see notable performances, but still, that's not even like, you know, junior high or high school bands. It might be a community band in Singapore has played Oracle, which is fun to think about.
So that's kind of fun,
Um,
isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. And then just a couple of universities and other places because they're required to report those performances as being part of academia. So I
Uh-huh.
don't always know where things are being performed. A lot of the percussion stuff will be performed in colleges because they might have non-majors taking percussion class who need to, they kind of need to perform something as part of those requirements.
Right.
So
Right.
not always do I know where things are, but I know that they do kind of occasionally pop up in different places in the world.
Uh-huh. So we just finished marching season, and
Yeah.
I bet you're glad.
It doesn't hurt my feelings. I love it, but I also love it because we don't do it 12 months a year. So yes,
Yes, yes. So, do you write your show, or do you write a lot of uh, marching shows at all?
I don't write for us. I used to, and when I took over at the high school, I tried to. But it's such a time-consuming job.
Uh-huh.
And then the problem is if you write something you don't like, then you have to live with it for the next 4 months. So what I do in my position at Canyon is we purchase things that we've heard other bands do really, really well, and then we get permission from those arrangers to let me customize it for our band. And
Oh,
maybe that's, move a solo from one instrument to another or shorten or elongate. So I have my fingerprints on things, but almost more in a supervisory role. Um, I do have quite a bit of marching shows for small schools that my friend Luke McMillan puts on his website and licenses to schools every year. So a lot of grade 1 and grade 2 that I might just get approached by a small school that needs something customized for them, and I'll do that. And that's been a really great situation because Luke is a former band director going into the business world. He handles all of the schools contacting him and asking him, oh, to send him score samples. I was trying to do that for a while, but just like the self-publishing thing, because it is kind of self-publishing, it is so time consuming that if you want to do the band directing job right and still have time to write, you
uh-huh.
don't have time also to go to the post office
Yeah.
or to answer an extra 10 emails on top of, just what you had in your normal school email.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of my stuff is just kind of living in his domain and is resold in a lot of different places in the country. So it's cool to see somebody from Tennessee post that they did one of my shows, and
Oh,
all.
but that, and I'm not going to say just outside of Texas, but the small school marching thing. I mean,
Oh yeah,
they need that.
they do.
Yeah, because there are not things specifically written for that, for sure.
Right.
So that's really awesome. Well, I'm trying to think. I'm going to use my little cheat sheet here to see if there's anything else that I'm missing. Um, do you see yourself as you said you've done 25 years uh, teaching, but I'm sure you're going to teach for a while longer because you have children, so you're going to be there for a while. But do you see your amount of composition increasing as the years go on, especially as you're looking into retirement, stuff like that?
Um, so yes, I would eventually like to retire to be able to do more clinic work and region band type work, but also to write. But I don't let that stop me. I just have to be very mindful of how much time I commit to that, and try to balance everything. I also play in the Amarillo Symphony,
Oh,
and
I know that too. I read
yeah,
that. Yeah.
the only reason I bring that up is I think they probably should have fired me by now because I play so little. I don't know how they can justify keeping me on the roster, but that's something else I really enjoy getting to do is play in that ensemble. So I have to be very careful about how all those things are balanced. But my youngest son, Harrison, is 8, and I've promised my wife that I will be his band director through his graduation. So that'll be about 35 years of teaching, 34 years, I think.
Yeah,
And of course, and that's the best. Teaching my own kids has been one of the most rewarding parts of my teaching career. And it's only really been in the last 6 to 8 years that I've even had my own kids in the band, but it's really a blast. And so I don't want to miss out with them, but
for sure. For
I will keep a somewhat steady writing schedule until I'm able to retire, and then hopefully have all the time in the world to want to write.
Yeah, for sure. I can only imagine teaching your own kids. My last job, I taught in an area where I had a lot of band directors that lived, so I
Oh
taught
yeah.
almost all the band directors' kids. Wonderful, you know.
Uh-huh.
So, did you start playing percussion before beginner band because you had this musical family, or did you start with the regular beginners like everybody else did? And do you start your children early?
Oh, I don't, well, piano lessons for
Oh,
our own
there you
kids.
go.
And so we kind of, my wife is, she's, first of all, she's the world's best band spouse,
Oh,
band mom, and band supporter, on the planet. But she kind of uses my pathway as a little bit of a template for our own personal kids. I took piano lessons from kindergarten to sixth grade. And then in sixth grade, when I joined the band and I chose and made percussion, and that was not a very rigorous process, but my parents said, well, we think he might be pretty serious about this, so let's put him in percussion lessons. So we've done that with our own children. They've taken lessons, piano lessons from relatively kindergarten, first grade until they got to their band career. And then we've had well, I've taught three of my five now are old enough to have gone through or are going through. And so starting in sixth grade, okay, here's your instrument that you tested on, here's your private lesson teacher, and that's been the kind of the template for our own kids. But I played a lot of drum set when I was a kid, just nothing super formal. I was very much behind a piano, um, regularly every day practicing. Like I said, as the son of professional musicians, the virtues of practicing were definitely extolled in my household.
that's awesome. So tell me, like, just in general, what composers have inspired you?
So from the um,
Band, orchestral, doesn't
yeah,
matter, just whatever.
I mean, if you were to think about it like the serious side of things, I love Shostakovich, which is cool because like a lot of us, our introduction to him was some of the stuff that's been transcribed for band
Uh-huh.
or drum corps that have played his stuff, and then we all kind of go, "Hey, wait a second, these are basically band pieces with string parts."
Right?
Prokofiev, love Prokofiev. On kind of the more serious side of things, Bernstein is, I'm a huge Bernstein fan. On the band side, I'm a Granger nut. I know as a percussionist, I shouldn't be just
I
because,
oh,
but what's not to love?
yeah, no kidding. Agreed.
Quirky background for sure.
Yes.
But I actually did my master's thesis on how unique his percussion writing was at a time when other composers were not writing for very much percussion, and he was writing for an expanded keyboard palette and all of these beautiful
I was going to say the
keyboard parts.
keyboard alone is just
For
good.
sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine Shepherd's Hay without the xylophone part?
No.
So it's very well, cliche to say instrumental, but a very big part of the DNA of his music. And then, I mean, I just love John Mackey's music. And I have started to get a greater appreciation for David Maslanka's music after we performed some last year. And then I just have such great respect for guys like Willie Owens and Robert Sheldon and Brian Balmages and Chris Bernatas. These guys who can write great music and do it for 13-year-olds. I think that's just an incredible feat. And it's one that I'm kind of clumsy at sometimes. So anytime a piece works for that grade level or that age, it feels like you have solved some intricate puzzle that has been laid out for you by the quote unquote limitations of what a junior high student can or cannot do.
I love that. And I love all the people that you named too. Um, you know, and they make young people sound good.
Yeah.
You know? And, as I am advising, people picking out programs, I, I have a list of people that say, if you pick this, your band will, you're ahead of the game.
Yes.
It's written to make it sound really good. So, well, that's awesome. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've missed because I don't want to miss. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I, know that some people will know your music and will enjoy this interview, and some people this may be an introduction, to you, and hopefully they can, you know, pursue music that is on their grade level and get to know you a little bit better. But is there anything else that you want to add before we sign off for the night?
I was thinking today about and I think this is true in the band directing world, but all of the people who help you become who you are going to become.
Okay.
And I know you mentor young directors and help coach ensembles. And all of us who do the band thing long term have those people that we have been mentored by and help us. And I was thinking about that in composition today because it's not unusual for an established composer to take a younger composer under their wing, either
Agree.
formally or informally,
Agree.
and say, hey, okay, you've got some really good ideas here. Let's see if we can help develop those. So I only have one piece with FJH music, but for many, many years, that was kind of like the one like real place that you went to just find
Right.
all these great works. And now there's so many great other options as well. But I would send things over, and Willie Owens was, I don't know if he was serving in a editorial capacity or he was maybe advising or he was just kind of the first stop when it came to submissions. But I can't tell you the number of times that I would send something to just kind of like a nameless portal at the FJH website or mail something off. And then I would get a text from Willie and he would say, yo, Eric, call me today. And so I would call him and he would say, yeah, I really like the ideas on this, but it's, the grade levels are really kind of strange for the clarinets and everything else is kind of a grade 2, but the percussion's like a grade 9. And he would really help me. I mean, no surprise, but
Yeah.
he would really help kind of coach me through what I needed to do to make my music more appropriate for the grade level I was shooting for, which also increases its marketability quite a bit. And the one piece that I did that's in the FJH catalog, Brian Balmages was the editor. So Willie signed off on it and then signed and sent it over to Brian. And Brian and I really collaborated on how to get that piece sort of across the finish line as far as what they wanted it to look like, where it would be in their catalog best. And I don't mean that he was changing things. I think he was taking what I had written and helping me make them better.
Well,
And then similarly with Robert Sheldon, it just blew my mind that I submitted to Alfred one day, and like a month later, Robert Sheldon emailed. It might as well have been Tom Cruise, like major major
fangirling a little bit.
celebrity
Yeah.
status.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Oh yeah, give me a call," and and he'd send me pages with his scribbles, and maybe consider this and that. And so I think
Well,
it's really easy to overlook.
the
We
three
know
people
this in the band world.
named have just been, great mentors in the way that
Yes,
you're talking about, and that's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, and you got to love that about the band world because those guys are band guys. They get that.
Yes, and I love that to me it makes the band world smaller.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're all over, but it doesn't matter. It's it's like kids are kids. Music is
Oh
music.
yeah.
So I love it. So, all right. Well, listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and as we talked about before I pushed record, I knew that I was going to learn a lot about you, and it's really interesting to see how people take different paths, to get to where they are right now. And yours has been very interesting, and you still have a long way to go. So,
In so many ways, yes.
okay, but thank you so much for giving your time. I know you're really, really busy, and I hope to see you not over the Zoom, but in person really soon.
Likewise. Yeah, thank you. And
Okay.
thanks for the invite.
Okay. Thank you.